Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 2. We would like to discuss about metaphor and simile interpretation in children. My name is Rini Amanda Zahra.
My name is Rania Natasha Sunardi.
So let's get started. Okay, firstly, Aristotle was the first to define the metaphor as implicit praise that used in poetry and rhetoric. But before we discuss it further, we have to know what is it exactly mean by metaphor and similes, and what makes that two things different. Okay, first we would like to discuss the definition of metaphor first. In Aristotle's view, the metaphor is almost equivalent to simile based on analogy, except that simile require the explicit form like or as. Metaphor is defined as a word or phrase that is used to refer to something else to show how similar the two things are. It is true that the two things used in the metaphor have the same in meaning but are completely different when taken literally. All right, and then we have example of metaphor. Yeah, metaphor, for example, love is battlefield. If we interpret it into Indonesian literally, then sentence means cinta adalah kawasan pertempuran. But when it really means is cinta adalah perjuangan. Okay, another example that is often used in general terms is you are killing it a cart. That doesn't mean someone has killed another person in a cart. However, someone has done something good and perfect in a cart. The sentence above are often used in songs, poetry, literatures, and even in daily life. So in a speech, if it is said metaphorically speech, then we don't need to translate it according to what is said because it will cause misunderstanding. So just take it as an idea or information. There are many other examples of metaphors such as Rick is a coach potato, honey, you are a firework, and I am titanium, which is used in the song of David Guetta. Okay, next. There a question, when metaphor is used exactly? All right, metaphor can be used in song, poetry, speech, and etc. So they can be used at any time we want. Metaphor can make a conversation or topic relatable and interesting to discuss. For some people, it is easier to understand the meaning through metaphors. Besides that, metaphors are also very beneficial for writers because they can make their writing more colorful and they can convey message implicitly so that it attracts the reader's attention. Okay, then we need to know there are the types of metaphor. So we have 4 types of metaphor. The first is implied metaphor, and the second is sustained metaphor. The third is mixed metaphor, and the last is dead metaphor. So what is the meaning of implied metaphor? Okay, this metaphor used to make sentence sounds more beautiful. For example, Hansel got his courtship cues from the peacock. In a room full of ladies, Hansel simply fans his feathers. Can you interpret that sentence? It literally means Hansel mendapat isyarat pacaran dari merak. Di ruangan yang penuh dengan wanita, Hansel hanya mengibaskan bulunya. But actually, the sentence wants to explain that Hansel has a charm like a peacock in seducing the ladies. The next is that metaphor. This figure of speech is considered better used directly than in writing because sometimes it can take away the power of sentence image. For example, heart of gold. Okay, next, sustained metaphor is a long figure of speech used in paragraph. The most popular example is Shakespeare's masterpiece, that is Romeo and Juliet. And the last is mixed metaphor. A mixed metaphor combines two metaphors in one sentence. For example, let's get all our ducks in the same page. The sentence is actually a combination of first, getting our ducks in a row and get on the same page. The sentence sounds funny, so it is a good idea not to use it if you don't want to make a joke because your work will sound strange and awkward.
So the second explanation is about simile. Simile is a part of figurative speech which compares two things that have something in common. Figure of speech that use direct comparative words to express something else, so that the meaning is conveyed explicitly. A simile is a description that uses like or as to make a comparison. The characteristic of simile is this language is suitable to use when a dramatic reinforcement is needed but doesn't have to be as strong as a metaphor. Sometimes using too many metaphors will make the work too monotonous or overwhelming due to its strong nature. Simile cooking is a 50-50 solution that can be used to balance this. This figure of speech is also more suitable for use in non-literary works such as speech text, lecture text, etc. Why? Because it will be easier to understand in one word or once read by the reader. Next is example of simile. Her smile is as bright as the sun, or her smile is bright like the sun. Both sentences are true and they both use as or like to equate two things, and the two sentences, if interpreted literally, senyumnya cerah seperti matahari. Another example is she is as sweet as waffles. The sentence, if it is interpreted literally, means dia manis seperti waffle, and the sentence can be understood easily than metaphor. So this is the difference about metaphor versus simile. Metaphor and simile are two different figures, even though they look similar. Metaphors use one thing to describe another. Metaphors convey meaning implicitly, while similes convey meaning explicitly. Usually, simile use the word like or as between two objects being compared. Simile can also be said to be easier to identify than metaphors. But can children understand and interpret both of the metaphor and simile? The first is a simile or analogy-based metaphorical comprehension ability tests prove that children are 3 years old have some basic abilities to recognize similarities in comparisons, and this ability to develop with age. Based on relevance theory or RT, metaphorical understanding is fundamentally different from understanding simile. The recognition of similarities is important strategies for this concept development. However, just paying attention to similarities is far from successful in understanding metaphors, because without the help of inner cognitive knowledge, some abstract concept will not be understood. The second is some research that use similes and metaphor as test material show understanding of the similes more accessible than metaphorical understanding. In comparative theory, it is believed that it is explicit like or as simplifies that metaphorical understanding. Children will find it easier to understand similes than metaphors, because metaphors require high reasoning abilities to understand. In interpreting, when they read a sentence, their imagination begin to actively imagine two things being compared so they can grasp the meaning they want to convey and they are able to reinform it. Meanwhile, in understanding the metaphor, they experience difficulties, and in interpreting it, there are many mistakes in the transmission of intent. And the third is the real metaphor test and categorization tests show that the understanding of the child's metaphor begins from an early age, but the environment and develops from the age of 9 to to 11 years, in accordance with legal developments in Pigot's theory.
All right, so that's all the explanation of metaphor and simile interpretation in children from us. We are sorry for our mistake. Thank you for your watching. And last we say, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.